Congressman, it's great to see you again. Thanks for coming back on the show. As you saw there, as I laid out before the break, the United States history with Israel runs deep, and with the sheer amount of aid provided to the country every year, the U.S. should, in theory, have significant leverage here over its conduct and certainly stated policies. Do you think it is exerting that leverage enough to get Israel at least to comply with a two-state solution that is our stated objective, or do you agree with your colleagues in the Senate that this administration could be doing more?
Thanks for having me, Eamon. There's no question we could be doing more in trying to make sure that there's peace in the region. I think Benjamin Netanyahu, unfortunately, is really doing more to keep himself out of jail with his actions rather than having peace in the region. And I've been to the region 3 times. I can tell you the last time I was there, it just reiterated what I've seen previously. The people of Israel and the people of Palestine want peace. People in Israel don't want to have bombs coming at them out of Gaza. People in Palestine want to have human rights and be treated with dignity. And you can do that with a two-state solution. That's why that's the U.S. position and Joe Biden's position. It's not Benjamin Netanyahu's position. And I think the fact that we are providing as much support as we are and potentially are with the bill that's coming up means we should have some more say in this, because as we're seeing right now, there seems to be some mission creep. We're watching additional areas in the region now that we're having to be involved. And people like me, my top priority is to make sure that we never have to send young American men and women into harm's way without a really, really good reason. And if we're not able to help convince Benjamin Netanyahu that he's going too harsh and that the direction he's taking is not advantageous to peace for the region, well then, perhaps there should be restrictions on any funding. And at minimum, we need to be much more, I think, aggressive in convincing Benjamin Netanyahu to follow what I think the people of Israel want and the people of America want.
So you brought up the issue of the bills and the funding. I want to dig into that a little bit. I'll start with the Senate bipartisan bill that just released tonight, $118 billion package. That includes border security measures, aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. Does this bill have any chance of making it through the House, where Speaker Johnson is introducing his own bill that just carved out aid alone entirely for Israel and American troops in the region and not doing anything on immigration or Ukraine?
Well, it's hard to predict what can happen in the Republican-controlled House these days. The bill that they were going to put forth was really to try to derail this bipartisan effort on all sorts of things, specifically funding for Ukraine. I mean, I've never seen a House majority before be so beholden to whatever Donald Trump wants and, in essence, whatever Vladimir Putin wants, because they're not willing to provide the support that I think we've all wanted to support. I think virtually every Democrat and a good chunk of Republicans would vote for support for Ukraine. However, with the way they function and the rule changes they made last year, where they don't even want to do anything in a bipartisan way, they have this ridiculous idea to just provide funding for Israel and nothing else. And that's not an answer. That's just really a way to try to stop anything from happening in a bipartisan way. So predicting Mike Johnson, predicting Marjorie Taylor Greene, if I could do that, I'd be in Vegas, not Congress.
Fair enough about the prediction, but what do you think it says? That they, out of all of the issues that are in front of them, including our own border and things that need to be done in this country, including helping Ukraine, because as we've heard and as others pointed out, the threat of Russia to NATO, they've only acted on getting more money to Israel immediately.
Right. So first of all, I mean, part of it is they seem to be supporting Vladimir Putin in as Donald Trump would like to, and therefore they haven't wanted to do Ukraine funding. And we've got about half of their caucus that's pretty against any funding for Ukraine. And then the rhetoric around the border is also ridiculous. I mean, we've watched Congress for 2 decades not do anything. Closest they got was my freshman term in Congress back in 2013. There was a bipartisan bill out of the Senate. I think it had 68 votes, which is, these days almost unanimous if you get anything close to that. And then John Boehner never took it up. But we've only gone downhill in the House, how we deal with this. Since Donald Trump, this issue has been so politicized. And then most recently, watching the Republicans say that they don't want to deal because they don't want to give any help to Joe Biden. Well, then all their rhetoric about the border has been completely BS. I mean, It's not even close to true. What we know is that when Donald Trump was president and for 2 years had a Republican majority in the House and the Senate, they did nothing about the border. That's what they're really about. And right now, they just don't want to stop anything from happening out of the Senate, and I think that's why we need to call them out.
I wanted to ask you about UNRWA for a moment, and as I laid out there, a little bit of this double standard between how we're dealing with funding to this organization compared to others. The United States has not independently verified Israel's claims that UNRWA's workers took part in the October 7th attacks. It seems whatever evidence they privately presented persuaded the U.S. and other allies to pause funding for the agency. And that decision could have a devastating impact on the civilians of Gaza who, as you know very well, are already struggling and facing all kinds of humanitarian catastrophes. Do you think the U.S. made the right decision here?
No, absolutely not. I think I'm one of the strongest supporters of UNRWA that's in Congress. I've been, like I said, in the region multiple times. They feed 1.2 million people a day prior to October 7th, educate 300,000 children. If they're not doing it, it is Hamas that is. So we can either decide Hamas is going to do all of this stuff, which we know they won't do, and there's going to be continued problems in Gaza, or we can fund an organization that is doing the right thing and providing this humanitarian support. Right now, 500,000 people are on the verge of starvation, women, children, and men in Gaza. And to take away funding from the group that does the most humanitarian assistance in the region, I think is a mistake. And let's be real clear. If 12 people, or for that matter, 20 people or 100 people were involved out of their 13,000 employees, they should have to be held accountable. But 13,000 employees in probably the worst area on the planet right now, you simply can't be responsible and keep track of every single one of the 13,000 people and know what happened. But they did immediately fire the people. That's what we need to do, is make sure that we're still protecting the humanitarian assistance they need in Gaza, but hold accountable for anyone who was involved.
Yeah, they said they fired them, and they also are going to hold them accountable criminally as well if this investigation leads to that conclusion. Congressman Mark Pocan, it's always a pleasure. Sir, thank you so much for making time for us and joining us.